Domestic violence is a significant issue in the South Asian community. I definitely see it. Women will come in and talk to me about it and tell me what's going on in their families.
They're stuck in a vicious cycle and just keeps on going, and then one day who knows how it's going to end up, and it continues for their kids, right? So if they see mom accepting being beaten when dad's drunk, then their daughters or sons are going to grow up thinking that's okay as well.
Alcohol, drug abuse, huge issue. Affects 80% of the population, and the Asian population is not exempt from that.
Sexual abuse and sexual assault is not about sex. It's about an individual using sexuality as a tool to abuse people and to hurt people.
I spend most of my time in the criminal courts. When I come into criminal court, I see a lot of hurt people.
All of the issues survive in silence. We don't address them. We don't deal with them. And when they do come to light, rather than poking at them and prodding at them to find out what's the root cause of this, we tend to just try to ignore it and to move past it.
Domestic violence knows no boundaries. It impacts everybody, and that does include the South Asian community.
The effects are significant when these types of issues go unresolved or untreated or unsupported. It has significant impacts on that family. I think it fractures the family. It doesn't allow them to thrive and be healthy and be strong. And when you have a community that's made up of families like that, as a community, I think it suffers and it's not able to be as strong and as thriving as it could be. Domestic violence creates chaos within a family, and it creates an environment of non-safety. So when someone's not feeling safe in their family home, that can obviously lead to issues around mental health issues, but certainly it can lead to harm within families. It can lead to impacts onto the children and onto the stability of that family.
Almost 30 to 40% of the files I have with South Asians have a domestic violence component to them, whether it is actual domestic violence or someone making the accusation of domestic violence, and that's disproportionately higher than my other files from other ethnic communities.
It was an Indian woman. Her husband was a drunk, and just through me she had gotten an emergency protection order at least twice. There was also sexual harassment by her father-in-law towards her. They had 4 kids together. She never worked a day in her life, and she was just stuck and didn't end up leaving. Started the court action, but it didn't go anywhere. So that's the one story that sticks with me.
One thing that we know is that people are reluctant sometimes to seek help for this problem, and there's a number of reasons for that. Shame can sometimes play into it, so they feel shameful or embarrassed for what's happening within their own families. The other big issue is that they don't know where they can go for getting help that is meaningful for them. And so oftentimes if there's language or cultural aspects to their social issues, they may not want to go to mainstream services because they don't feel like those services are set up for them if they understand that their particular situation.
One of the effects of sexual abuse and sexual assault is that individuals, families, and communities often carry a lot of shame around it. Where the shame belongs is on the person who has chosen to commit these crimes and not with the people that have been victimized.
Primarily my clients are Indian, Punjabi, the Punjabi community, and I do handle a lot of domestic assault where the clients, other parties have substance abuse issues, and the biggest concern I see is that they don't recognize they even have a problem, or they don't want the help of the outside services. And if someone tries stepping in, telling them either to take, parenting after separation or any other courses that would be beneficial for them, like for addictive services, they just don't want to, or they take it because they have to get back, either to see their kids, get back with their spouse. They're not taking it to actually better their lives. And I feel like they don't understand the psychological ramifications for their children, just from immediate to the future, like as they're growing up.
It tears families apart. You see it not only in the context of drugs, but you see it in the context of all criminality. And that includes domestic violence, as well as addiction issues, such as addictions to alcohol and addictions to drugs.
And I look at the addiction as no different than a cancer. Some people can fight it, a lot of people cannot. The problems are no different psychologically from anybody else, but our community don't talk about them. I would sit in the meetings with these alcoholics or drug addicts, and they would not confess to how serious their problem was. In fact, they all minimalized it.
One that always has resonated with me was getting a phone call from a mother of two, really emotional about realizing that her husband had withdrawn $100,000 from their line of credit with respect to a heroin addiction. And so she had thought he was building up a business, but in fact what had happened was that he was spending all their money on heroin, and the first she came to learn of it was when the bank called in the loan. So they lost their home, she went into bankruptcy, all because of an addiction.
The drug situation, primarily looking at the South Asian community, is concerning. There are a lot of younger individuals who are getting involved in it, and they've skipped the entry-level drugs, the gateway drugs such as marijuana, and they've gone directly to the harder drugs such as heroin.
What's universal to most addicts, 99% of addicts, is that there's a history of abuse. The abuse can be sexual, physical, verbal, neglect, anything. And so kids of alcoholics get neglected or abused by their father who beats someone who's drunk. And they are now 3 times more likely to become alcoholics.
There's reasons why they can't leave. Either they love their spouse, they're scared, financial reasons, and that's basically they're confused if they should leave. So they stay and they don't want the community to shaming them. And biggest thing is like finances. They don't have the money available to just get up and leave with 2-3 kids and start a new life.
The Provincial Court of Alberta and the Court of Queen's Bench, so those are the front lines with respect to dealing with these issues with emergency protection orders, domestic violence and substance abuse. So, you know, those are the arenas right now where we're dealing with these issues, and PCHS might be an avenue to alleviate some of that stress on the courts when they're having to deal with these things day in and day out.
We see issues of domestic violence and substance abuse on a daily basis. Currently, we are on track to average about 55 emergency protection orders a month. We have now formed 2 specialty courts to deal with this problem. One is a substance abuse court and one is a domestic violence court, which works in tandem with the emergency protection orders that we issue in our division.
PCHS is doing a couple of things. So first off, they're actually talking about these issues. They're bringing them to the forefront. And then they're also setting up services that are language and culturally appropriate for people to utilize.
It's great because it's something because there are services available. Of course, there's so many services available, but because it's related, they're Punjabi as well, there's the cultural similarities that they can understand where you're coming from and why women do put up with what they put up with, and not just that, you know, just judging them based on like, why don't you just get up and leave? But they also understand the cultural, like your family, the community, money, and just whatever travels from back home from India here. They understand why the women might be putting up with what they're putting up with, and just offering those services to them in a more place that's close to home.
PCHS has realized that this culture, the South Asian culture, is a very family-knit, very large umbrella type of culture, so that the help doesn't just come to the person seeking it, it also comes to the family so that they can help support them. So that's what makes it unique, and that's what makes me hopeful that it'll be able to help these problems.
Punjabi Community Health Services provides a valuable service to the overstretched legal system. To the extent their services are able to prevent issues regarding domestic violence and substance abuse arising in the first place, they are indeed a service that is most needed in our community.
We know that sexual violence hurts people. It hurts them emotionally, physically, spiritually. It hurts families, it hurts communities. But we also know that when it comes out of the silence and secrecy, people are able to heal from it.
Domestic violence is a complex social issue, and we know that it's not something that we can solve alone. And this is why Homefront partnering with PCHS and the other organizations is part of that solution.
Rather than sweeping these issues under the rug, we can break the code of silence and do something about these issues. Let's talk about building healthy families together and start conversations around change.
The reality is that PCHS is only going to go as far as we as a community let it go. We're very good at funding things. We're very good at when we identify that something is an issue in our community and it needs funding, it gets it. Hopefully now we've come to the point where we're mature as a community and recognize that the only way we're going to be able to deal with these types of problems is going to be able to fund them, and that funding is going to have to come from our own pockets.
It is possible. We can have healthy, happy families. We have to talk about these issues, strengthen our families, and strengthen our relationships, and this can all be done with organizations like PCHS.